America's mental health treatment system is broken, leaving those most in need to fall through the cracks. An estimated 8.3 million adults in the United States have a severe mental illness. At any given time, 3.9 million go untreated. My name is Misty Brooks, and I'm here today to talk to you about how stricter gun control is not necessarily the answer to end gun violence, but maybe that an improvement in our mental health system could have a potentially greater impact. While we all want to do our part in reducing the risk of mass shooting, stricter gun control may not be the solution. Just like many of you, when I hear of a potentially preventable tragedy, I want to do my part to help reduce any future risks. Unfortunately, stricter gun control and laws are not always the answer. While laws need to be in place, we also need to look at the potential root cause and how and why a tragedy happens. Not only am I a responsible gun owner, but I have worked in our healthcare system for years. While I cannot say either system is perfect, our mental health system needs reform before our gun laws do. I have a close family member who unfortunately had her life cut too short due to gun crimes and mental illness. While I was filled with so much emotion at that time, I never blamed guns for this tragedy. Today I want to talk about my transition into becoming a gun owner and how I felt about guns prior, how we view gun violence and why we may be looking at it from the wrong perspective, as well as the links between gun violence, mental health issues, and our broken mental health system. I hope you all will keep an open mind as I continue this speech. While this is a very emotional and sensitive topic, I do believe to limit the number of preventable tragedies in our great country, we need to keep an open mind. Sometimes the solution is not simple and will require a complex solution. I believe to prevent gun violence, we will need to think outside the box and work together. I grew up in a hunting household, but at that time I never wanted to shoot a gun and had no use to own one. Don't get me wrong, I respected others' right to legally own a gun, but it was just not something that I had a need for. As a kid, my dad had me take hunter safety. He believed that it was good for everyone to have a knowledge and respect of both guns and hunting. Being a responsible gun owner is a privilege, responsibility, as well as a right we have as an American citizen. It was a few short years ago that I got interested in hunting. I wanted to understand it. I had no idea at the time how much this experience would help shape a new respect for hunters and gun owners alike. I started with simply learning the proper way to hold and shoot a rifle. Once I was able to make a consistent, accurate shot, it was time to head out for my first day of hunting. Sitting in the cold field and waiting for my first deer to come out was such an eye-opening experience. I had no idea at that time if I could even pull the trigger on such a beautiful animal, but knew even if I didn't, this experience was amazing and worth it. I was able to harvest my first deer that day. It was one of the most emotional experiences of my life. I cried both when I pulled the trigger and when I found her. This was the beginning of a new understanding and appreciation for a world I had never experienced. As I learned more about guns and hunting, I made the decision to become a gun owner for the first time. I had no idea all the steps needed to purchase a new gun. My first purchase was my very own hunting rifle. After researching the type of rifle that would be right for my needs, it was time to go purchase. Anytime you purchase a gun, it needs to be done through a federal firearms licensed dealer or an FFL dealer. Even if it's an online purchase, it must be shipped to an FFL dealer to pick up and get the paperwork completed. The responsibility of the FFL dealer is to properly identify the individual who is purchasing the gun, run a background check on the individual. There is a fair amount of paperwork and time involved in this process. There is federal requirements for this process as well as many strict state, county, and city requirements in some area. This is just one of the many ways we already have gun control measures in place. Unfortunately, though, this does not stop people who cannot legally obtain a gun from getting a hold of them. I do encourage you to take a moment and consider if you feel these laws are now strict enough. If people are already going around the proper channels to obtain a gun illegally, what will more gun laws really accomplish? Wouldn't it still just keep the honest people honest? With stricter requirements for a driver's license, or in the case of a license being suspended, do we still not have a problem with unlicensed drivers? What about the number of repeat drunk drivers we have? How many unfortunate lives have been lost due to a drunk driver? How many of you have went through the process of obtaining your concealed carry permit, or CPL? Like the process of obtaining a driver's license, there is a class to obtain a CPL. A CPL is renewed on your birthday not less than 4 years or more than 5 years in Michigan. Unlike obtaining your driver's license, you are required to not only pass a CPL class, but you will also get fingerprinted on a federal level before your CPL is issued. A CPL is not required in the purchase of a gun, it is only required in concealed carry of a pistol. One thing most gun owners do not realize is even once you obtain a CPL, you are still required to have all the same screening of the questionnaires, background check, and being properly identified before purchasing a gun. A CPL in one state does not carry over to other states as well, unlike a driver's license. In order to legally conceal carry in different states, you would need to look up the laws and most commonly need to get a CPL in each state you intend to conceal carry in. Even with all the processes currently in place to ensure legal and safe gun ownership, there are still people who obtain guns in an illegal manner, and those who are also use guns purchased illegally or legally in violent crimes. It is not the gun that turns violent, but the people operating them. Like a car accident. How often do we blame cars for a fatal accident regardless of the circumstances? This is because it is neither the car that caused the tragedy, but it is human involvement. The same is true when you think about a tragedy involving a gun. Without human involvement, the gun would not have the ability to injure anyone, let alone commit a mass shooting. According to an article published in February of 2022 by the National Institute of Justice, there are potential traits of persons who have engaged in public mass shootings collected in a comprehensive new database of identified U.S. mass shootings from 1966 to 2019. They define a mass shooting as a shooting that kills 4 or more people. They collected data on 172 mass public shooters over more than 150 psychosocial history variables, such as those individuals' mental health history, past traumas, interest in past shootings, and situational triggers. While the data spans mass shootings over more than 50 years, 20% of the 162 shootings occurred in just the last 5 years, with over half of those occurring after 2000 and 33% occurring after 2010. Not only have we seen an increase in number of mass shootings in a short time, the death toll from those shootings have increased as well. In the 1970s, mass shootings claimed an average of 8 lives per year. But from 2010 to 2019, the average was up to 51 deaths per year. Within this study, there are many findings on what could be some strong predictors of perpetrating of mass shootings, with 30% being suicidal prior to the shooting, with an additional 39% being suicidal during the shooting. 31% of persons who perpetrated mass shootings were found to have experienced severe childhood trauma. Over 80% of those were in crisis. You may find it surprising to learn that 48%, or nearly half of all individuals who engage in mass shootings, leak their plans ahead of time. They discuss it with family members, friends, colleagues, even strangers and law enforcement officers. While none of these people are to blame for the shootings, it does give us information on how getting these people in crisis the help they are begging for. I started today with a startling statistic. It is estimated that 8.3 million adults in the United States have a severe mental illness, and at any given time, 3.9 million go untreated. Just think about what would happen if we could get those 3.9 million the help they need. How many lives would have been saved, not only from mass shootings, but suicide as well? There are several barriers that contribute to the breakdown in our mental health system. A few of those are cost, lack of providers and facilities, as well as barriers in the amount of providers accepting insurance. Some people are predicting there will be a shortage of almost all types of mental health providers by 2025, with a single treatment session costing anywhere from $65 an hour to $225 an hour. For those lucky enough to afford insurance, these sessions could have a lower cost. But with insurance, there are other criteria that a person may need to meet, such as having a mental health diagnosis, meeting a deductible, or getting a referral for treatment. This contributes to added cost and time wasted at a potential critical moment. As you can see, our mental health system has many flaws that need repair. With these repairs, we may be able to begin saving innocent lives. But what about the guns and owners? If we have stricter gun control, that would certainly save more lives, right? That may or may not be as true as you believe. Did you know that most mass shootings involve handguns? 77.2% of mass shootings involving a handgun involve a handgun, and only 25.1% involve a semi-automatic rifle. Most of you know of a semi-automatic rifle, know them as an AR. One of the common types of an AR is an AR-15. But what exactly is an AR-15? When most people think of an AR-15, or an AR rifle for that matter, what do they assume it stands for? We have been conditioned to believe it stands for assault rifle, or some think it stands for automatic rifle, when in fact both are incorrect. The AR stands for Armalite rifle. These are neither fully automatic or assault rifles at all. Fully automatic rifles or assault rifles have been severely restricted from civilian purchase since 1934. Assault weapon is a political term that was created by California anti-gun legislators to ban some semi-automatic rifles there in the 1980s. When looking at guns used in mass shootings, 77% of those engaged in mass shootings purchased at least some of their guns legally, while illegal purchases were made 13% of those committing mass shootings. Cases involving K-12 school shootings, over 80% of individuals who engaged in shootings stole guns from their family member. These findings support safe storage of guns, but not the need for stricter gun control. Improvements in gun safety classes and a restructure of our mental health system would have a great effect on the underlying causes of mass shootings over stricter gun control. I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to be here today and learn more about responsible gun ownership, a new perspective to look at gun violence, and what the potential causes of the unfortunate tragedy of mass shootings, as well as the links between gun violence and our broken mental health system. I would like to take a moment to remind everyone, while not everyone with a mental illness would become a perpetrator of a gun crime, mental illness is almost always a factor in gun crimes. I hope we will all do our part in helping our many friends and family members who suffer from mental illness to find the help they need.